Nicky, thank you so much for being my very first guest on The Road Less Travelled. It is an absolute honour to have you on here. Now, I was thinking last night about how do I intro you as a guest. I was like, do I call you a writer? Do I call you literary critic? Do I call you like what do I call? I was like, I don't think I can do you justice because you do so many different things. So, would you like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's exciting. So I'm a writer. I think I usually go with the word writer because it feels like it covers a multitude of sins. So I'm an author. I write short fiction, non-fiction, and plays. And then I also write literary criticism, kind of cultural criticism. Like I write about films, I write about TV, I write about music. And as you already know, Charlie, I have a special affinity for writing about Taylor Swift.
You do, and I really want to talk about that as well because that's pretty niche. I'm not going to lie. And I really want to talk about that as well. I think just for a bit of context on the view, so how we met is we actually met at uni, and you have gone on to pursue this really exciting diverse career, and I've gone into like the corporate world, so so I can see who's more interesting now, the two of us. So I guess when I was thinking about this podcast, like a message from this podcast is very much about showing people that if you take a path that's not linear or it doesn't follow like a very obvious series of steps, and you're still kind of using the journey to explore the journey as well as the journey being itself, then that's totally okay. And I guess when we were at uni, there were a lot of people, because we did English literature, and there's a lot of people that were like, oh yeah, I want to be a writer or an author, but a lot of people that then didn't go on to actually do that, whereas you have. And I guess I was wondering if you could maybe share a little bit about your path into writing, because I know you've done lots of things along the way to get you there, but that's always been the constant thread.
Yeah, it was very much, it was a very random kind of path, and I'm very much still at the beginning of it. I mean, I hope. But yeah, I think I was like one of those people at uni where I was like, I'm a writer. And people would be like, what kind of writer? And I'd be like, I don't know. I just want to write things. Like, we'll
Words.
see.
What do you think I'm going to write? Words.
Yeah, exactly. Just like words and like books. And people are like, what kind of books? And you're like, books, the concept of books. So I think I never really had like an idea of myself like as a fiction writer or like as a, you know, like I knew people who wrote poetry. I attempted to write poetry. It was not very good, so I abandoned it. But there were a lot of people who kind of knew exactly what they were doing and what they wanted to do, and I was never one of those. And I really just like fell into writing initially theatre criticism for free, as in I wasn't getting paid for it, but I would get like free tickets to things. So I was like, okay, this is a good way to like go and see theatre that I couldn't afford otherwise as a student. Which was someone that one of our lecturers knows ran a website for theatre reviews, and like he emailed all of us and was like, my friend wants reviewers, and we were like, cool, we'll do it. So that was my first like writing for publication, which was not very, there weren't a lot of like editorial standards or anything. When you're writing for free, there's not a lot of like
anything goes.
Yeah, pretty much. And then alongside that I started writing for like one of the uni magazines, and there was also like a student publication that I wrote for, that like some random person, I think I found them on Instagram, like some random person just set up a like website for students, and we were like, this is niche and no one else is doing this. And then that folded, and like other stuff like that. And I also had blogs. Like once a year I would be like, I'm going to start a blog, and it's going to be different to all of the previous blogs I've done, because this one's going to be like interesting and about interesting things. And then after like 3 posts I would give up on it. So I think I've always been writing like for an audience, even if that audience is of 0 people. I've always been like interested in addressing writing to someone rather than like writing for myself, or like as much as writing for myself. And then after uni I wrote a lot of like articles about music reviews. It was 2017, so I wrote about Reputation, I wrote about Melodrama by Lord, all of the Jack Antonoff productions of 2017, and from there I like kind of branched out a little bit into other kinds of cultural criticism, but I was kind of getting frustrated at that point about not being paid for stuff, not having kind of editorial relationships where someone was like trying to make my writing better or like trying to push me, and just having kind of me sending them something and then being like, yeah, fine, and then like the website folding 3 weeks later. So in 2019 I kind of took a step back from that, and at that point I was gainfully employed, and I was so I work at a multi-art centre. I don't know if I'm allowed to say what it is. So it's a multi-art centre
of undescribed origins.
Yeah,
in a large city that we don't know where that is.
yeah Everything is redacted, but I work in the box office, and so I get to see a lot of stuff at my workplace, and we also have access to a lot of other things, so like all of the arts organizations, other scheme missions, and they can come to ours for free, stuff like that. So I saw loads of art that year. I saw loads of films, loads of art. I read loads of books. I was like just getting back into reading post English degrees, and it was a really big year for like soaking things up. And I think of it as like a year that I didn't really write stuff, and that's actually not true at all. Just a year I didn't publish anything, but I wrote like a bunch of short stories. I wrote a play. I wrote like half of a novel, and then I abandoned it because it was boring. But I tried a lot of new stuff for the first time, and that was really, I think, where I laid the foundations for what I do now. Even though at the time I thought it was like a complete failure of a year because I hadn't like published enough things to at the end of the year be able to do a little roundup on Twitter and be like, these are my favorite pieces that I published this year. And then
I've been making some notes as you've been talking to that. There's a lot of things that you've said that really stick out to me, because so obviously I'll put this on YouTube, and I know that most of the audience that is there at the moment on YouTube are kind of people who are leaving university. They split into two very key categories, like 18 to 24 and 25 to 34. So they're people very much leaving university, so like shaping what it is they want to do with their lives. And I think you said some stuff that even if people are listening and they're like, actually, I don't want to be a writer, but actually you've said things that are true, whatever you want to do in life, whether that's writing, whether that's immediately can't think of any other careers. Other careers are available. So, into the corporate world, into entrepreneurship. I know there's a bit of an entrepreneurship following, and I really wanted to kind of unpack some of these things. And I'll just read aloud the words I've written because they're really random. Start for free, not audience, immerse, try stuff, bin if it's not wrong. Actually, I think I meant if it is not. If it's wrong. If it is working, please immediately.
If it's right, just bin it.
If it's working, self-sabotage. This is not.
Which is in fact
surprisingly relatable.
Quite relatable.
This is not the message of the podcast. If it's working, please self-sabotage. The end. I just want to, before we carry on, I just want to go back and unpack some of what you're saying. First is the starting for free. I think the thing that is really sticking out to me that I also feel an affinity with as well, having done a bit of entrepreneurship, is it's about not being afraid to start and not know what the end of the journey looks like. So, for example, when you said, "Okay, I'm gonna just I saw this thing on Instagram. I'm just gonna reach out to them. I'm just gonna write for them. It's gonna be for free. It's not gonna be people whose job it is to help me get better at it. I'm gonna try and make myself a bit better at it every time I do it. But fuck it, I'm just gonna. Oh, I've got to say that. I have to edit that word out. But stuff it. I'm just gonna give it a go and do it. I guess that feels quite scary.
Yeah.
How did you overcome the first step to push yourself to actually do that? How did you get in a place where like, just going to hit send.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, like I said, I had this like idea of myself as someone who was going to be a writer, even if I wasn't like yet a writer. And one of the things that appealed to me about most of the places that I wrote for is that like they were quite small and no one I knew was actually going to read it. Which was like frustrating, because I was like, I know all of these people and they could be a readership, but I was also like, let's be honest, I don't want them reading it. That would feel disgusting. So I don't know if I necessarily thought about it like this at the time, but I've done a lot of self-reflection in the years since. But I think it was probably like a way of like testing things out for myself without people that I knew watching me and like judging that progress that I was trying to make for myself. I've always been very private, but also had this kind of urge to like perform for an audience, just like not an audience who knows anything about me. Like I want these like very distinct personas. And I think that was a really good way of kind of doing that. And it was only much later that I started thinking about like, actually, if I want to be a writer, what's my brand? Like, what is my niche? What am I interested in? What do I want to be known for? If people are writing something about Taylor Swift, I want them to come to me. How are they gonna like get there? But at the beginning it was really just like whatever I could get. I was very happy taking assignments and for people to be like, I need you to write about this. I'd be like, okay, cool. But I was also really happy for them to be like, write whatever you want. And I would be like, okay, I'm gonna write about like punk and like genderqueer fashion in 2015. And I think I'm like discovering something. I was not discovering something, but that's okay.
Well,
like
yeah, I think that's true. You say you weren't discovering something, but actually you kind of were, right? Like maybe the output of the thing, the actual message of the thing you had created maybe wasn't saying something new because you were still learning. But actually you have discovered, which is you've discovered something about you and your writing style, that there's this concept, and it's always like, doesn't matter what you do, just make the next thing you do 1% better. It doesn't have to be 10% better, 50% better, like just make 1% better. And I think what you've just learned is like what your next 1% is that you're going to do next time, and all of that shapes you.
I think a lot of the early stuff that I wrote when I was given license to write what I wanted, and actually when I wasn't as well, I was still like shoehorning my own interest in, but a lot of the early stuff I wrote, I look back and I'm like, well, I think this is crap, but can I say crap?
I think I might have did that word out as well. Yeah.
Well, this is not very good. But I can also see like the seeds of ideas that I've come to really enjoy exploring like in much greater depth now. And that's really interesting. I saw a tweet a couple of weeks ago, which I literally haven't stopped thinking about. And I think it was supposed to be about academic writing, but I think it applies to everything, definitely all of the writing that I do, which was the conclusion of your first draft should be the introduction to your final draft. And I was like, that. Oh my God, this has changed my life.
Oh, I love that. That's so wow. I really
how
like
good
that.
Is that?
That's so good. And the reason I also say that is so one of the other things I do aside from my job as a consultant is, and I say that not for your benefit, but like for the viewers' benefit, or listeners. Hello, listeners. But I'm a consultant like in my day job. But one thing to do on the side is I do some digital marketing. I also got a startup, and one of the things I do as part of that is to create websites. And it's particularly when I was creating my own personal website. It took a long time, and I say a long time, it wasn't like that long, like a couple of weeks, before it was really in a place where I wanted it to be. But I was also acutely aware that I just wanted to get something out there and publish it, mainly because, exactly like you say, right, no one's really going to read it, but it just feels like the act of having published it and having done it feels productive to then push you to be able to iterate it so that the end of that draft becomes a first draft. Because if you never actually publish it, you will never get better at it, because you are sitting waiting for the perfection of the first draft, where that's not how that comes. It comes from putting it out there. And that doesn't matter if it's a blog, or if it's a website, or if it's actually just your CV, if it's just a job application. Like exactly the same principle applies. I just really like that concept. I feel like I'm going to take that away outside of a writing concept and put it into digital marketing, put it into entrepreneurship, even put it into consulting if I don't get fired for that.
I feel like I'm thinking about it in like every area of my life now.
Like you're cooking your dinner. No, it's not literally perfect. But you know what? This starter, it's the beginning of my next course. And the thing that also struck out is you just try stuff. Like you say yes, and so I always have this thing in my head. If I someone sends an opportunity, I'm like, say yes to the dress. Ironically, I don't have that many dresses. But you're not afraid to try stuff, and you're not afraid to kind of just say yes and try it. I guess I want to talk a little bit about what you decide to say yes to, because it's easy to then say yes to everything and then look and go, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And again, I think this applies in a writing context, but also in a broader life context where you might have like several job opportunities, or like you might be in a job and someone offers you loads of additional work on top of your day job. You want to try stuff, but like, how do you choose?
I've been in that position many times in both a writing context and a non-writing context. And I think, like, in terms of writing, the big thing for me was at the end of 2018 being like, actually, I don't think that a lot of the stuff that I wrote this year has really like fulfilled me. I don't think any of it is going to advance my career, because I now have enough bylines in like unpaid websites to say, look, I've written stuff, but the more that I kind of accumulate in this category is not going to help me now transition to like the next category. And then I was also becoming much more interested in and confident about like creative writing. And I think I initially really stuck to like criticism, because that feels, or like to me, it felt a lot less scary, because you're like, it's always easier to like critique other people's things than to like, do something yourself.
So gives you a blank piece of paper.
Complimentary, but it's a lot easier to be like, oh, Melodrama is an album about parties, than to like try and write your own like examination of like millennial ennui. So I kind of got to a point where I was like, actually, that's what I want to start doing. I want to start trying to do this kind of stuff for myself, and that means that I'm going to have to stop taking these opportunities, but actually they don't feel like opportunities that are useful anymore. And then kind of down the line again, I was like, okay, I now need to make some money because I don't get paid very much. So I need to start freelancing. And I then started, again, initially I was just taking everything I could get. So I signed up to a bunch of like freelancer opportunities, newsletters, and there are like a couple where the person who collates all of the opportunities for freelance writers, social media marketing, copywriting, that they can find, and they will just like email them around to their email list. And I would go through all of them and just like apply for everything. Like I just email everyone and be like, I want to write about this, I want to write about this, I want to write about this. And then like some of them I got paid not very well, and then there were like a couple of really random ones that I got Business Insider. I wrote an article for at the beginning of 2020. And it was literally, it's like the most random thing I've done in my life to date. Was like, I wrote an article for Business Insider.
That's so cool. As someone who's like very much in a business world, that is that's my views. If you've done that, pretty much making it like next is the big economy.
Yeah, it was a big crossover for me. But that was actually like really fun, and the editorial team were really nice about it. But yeah, I think a lot of like by the end of 2020, because then we were in a pandemic and I didn't need money because I wasn't leaving my house, I again kind of slowed down and was like, hang on, do I like writing any of these things, or am I just writing them for the money? And if I don't need the money, then I don't need to be doing that. And actually I have my own personal creative projects that I'd rather be focusing on. So actually, like, again, let's take a step back and focus my time on the stuff that I am finding fulfilling. But I've got balance, and I never know if I'm making the right choice. But I think I usually kind of get to a point where I'm like, this has been feeling like it's draining for a while, for long enough for me to know that this isn't just like depression or like I just don't like this particular project. This is kind of enough of a pattern for me to take a step back and like examine it a bit.
I think this this makes a lot of sense, and that really resonates, because what I'm hearing is this pattern of kind of you want to do something different, so you go out there and you say yes to a bunch of stuff. You go and try a shed ton of stuff, and you're not afraid to do that because right at the beginning in uni you said yes, so you got like that idea of just cold calling and applying for things and just going for it. It doesn't frighten you anymore because you've acclimatized yourself to that from when you started really early. So then that allows you've refined that now, so that when you do that, if you like a period of growth, you do a period of identification where you identify what it is you want to do next. Then you do a period of almost aggressive growth where you go out there, say yes to all of the opportunities, immerse yourself in it. And that's another word I'd written that down earlier, was you 100% immerse yourself in it. And then you let it get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, actually this is quite a lot now. And then when you recognize that point, you then step back and reflect. And that reflection is the output of that is the next thing that you want to do next, whether that's going deeper into an existing thing or whether that is trying something new altogether. And then you repeat the cycle. You talk a lot about starting stuff and abandoning things, and again, highly relatable content, but how do you know when it's time to draw the line?
Good question. I don't think I do. I think it's probably different like every time, because your life circumstances are always going to play into this as well. Like it's easy to be like, I'm a like static person who has like X potential for output and like Y skills, and I'm doing Z task, and like eventually I will exceed like my potential on one of these things. But like actually during the pandemic I had a lot more time to write. Sorry, my alarm keeps going off. During the pandemic I had a lot more time to write.
Wake up, Nicky, it's time to get up.
Because I didn't have anything else to do. It is time to take my meds. That's what the alarm's for.
Bear with me. Do you want a second? Yeah. Cool. So we were talking about when do you know that an opportunity has run its course and it's time to abandon something and put it in the bin and move on? Because I personally love to flog stuff until I hate it, and that's very not helpful.
Yeah, I do the same. And I think like you said, like I like to immerse myself in things. I like to become completely obsessed with whatever I'm currently doing and like make that my entire life and entire personality. And then I get to a point where I'm like, I hate this. I'm sick of this. I don't do this anymore. And then I feel really empty and I have to like find a new thing to become my entire personality. But yeah, I think feeling somewhere on like the spectrum from like drained to unfulfilled, or unfulfilled to drained, one of them being like a lack of getting energy and the other one being like a complete like emptiness of energy. Because I think like with theatre reviews especially, that was like really how I was feeling after a while, and I loved doing it when I was a student because like I got to see so many cool things for free, and I was like, I had the time. And we were supposed to upload reviews within 24 hours of seeing the show, because obviously like especially if it's a fringe show that's only on for a couple of days, and that was like really good for me. I think it was like one of the things that has most obviously improved my writing, but I also think a lot of that improvement came after I actually stopped doing it. Like I think the act of having to do this a couple of times a week to really quickly throw together like a short review, I had in my mind like a template, and I would be like, okay, I'm going to start with a catchy opening sentence, I'm going to talk about costuming, then I'm going to talk about staging, then I'm going to talk about themes, and then I'm going to like end on a like another catchy sentence. And that was like a formula that I found really worked, but it also got to the point where it was like really uninspired, and I was writing about stuff and I was also like kind of burnt out on theatre. Like I would go and I would be like, yeah, cool, it's keen here, like great.
Yeah, like
and
there were people, they were on the stage, they spoke. Yeah, I don't remember.
Exactly.
The tickets were free, so thank you.
That was also because of like, again, where I was at in my life, like the end of my degree, I was like very depressed. I was very like tired and like struggling with a lot of other stuff as well. But it kind of stopped being a delight. It stopped being something that I was super excited to be like allowed to do. Like I wasn't like, I get to do this, and like, do people know about this? Like I've hacked the system. I get to go to the theatre for free, and then I get to write about it. Like incredible. And it got to the point where I was like,
yeah.
And I think like noticing when you're edging into that territory and being able to say like, what is it about this that is problematic? And like for me it was like there could be many things factoring into like why I'm not enjoying like the theatre as much anymore, but like actually I do not enjoy the process of sitting down and having to write a review. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like I have room to talk about my actual like thoughts and feelings. It doesn't feel expansive enough. It doesn't feel interesting enough. I want something more creative. And then I kind of took that and was like, okay, what can I do next?
Yeah, I think what's coming out to me is that you have a huge amount of self-awareness, and actually I think what is going to come out throughout this whole series is, if you want to follow a path that is not obvious, either because you consciously make the decision, I don't want to follow the path, or, and I think you and I kind of fall into this category, is we know that we want to do a thing and we kind of don't care that the thing is not a like traditional thing to do off the back of the thing we've just done before, and we choose not to care about that. We just choose to pursue that because it genuinely interests us. And to do that without burning out, or when I say without burning out, maybe it's not that, because I've burnt out, and like I know that just before Christmas I was quite near the point of burnout again, but it's that point of being able to have the self-reflection to be aware of how you're feeling and how you respond to this, because it's all very well immersing yourself and stuff, it's all very well saying yes to everything, and it's all very well putting yourself out there, but if you don't know what it is you actually want to get in return for that, like what good looks like, and if you don't know yourself well enough to know, okay, I need to draw a line in the sand for this thing and do this other thing, like what is it about the thing that's unconventional that you enjoy? Is it just being different? That's fine, but it's generally something else within that being different that pushes you to pursue loads of stuff. Were there things that you did along the journey to kind of help you recognize those signs and triggers, like need to change something now?
I think both. I think big burnout was like post masters, and I was just like, for many reasons, incredibly unwell in every possible way, and that was around the time that I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue. So I was like, I'm not just going to burn out, I'm going to develop a chronic illness.
Nice. If you're going to do it properly. You said earlier, when you immerse yourself in something.
Exactly, I commit. So that kind of necessitated a lot of like unpacking, and it's also like kind of a weird disease condition. Like no one knows what causes it. There are lots of theories, but like no one quite knows. And my specialist has a pet theory that like the majority of people who develop it are perfectionists who push themselves too hard and burn out and then develop chronic fatigue. And I was like, that's so interesting.
That sounds quite relatable.
So yeah, I think like I had to spend a lot of time when I was getting that diagnosed thinking about like what activities I'd been doing for the last couple of years and how they'd been impacting me. And I was also going through like, you know, like the general like post-grad crisis that I think everyone goes through. I was like unemployed and I couldn't get a job and I couldn't stay awake for more than like 4 hours a day. And I was like doing all these hospital appointments, and I was like in therapy, and I was dealing with like all of the horrible personal stuff that had happened in the last like 2 years. I was like going through a breakup. So there was like literally everything based my sense of self on had like gone. And I think I, up until this point, like didn't have like a real sense of self. We again will probably talk, if we talk about neurodiversity, I think we'll talk about this later, but like I basically was like, I don't feel like a real person. I'm like pretending to be a person all of the time. And like my friendships and my relationship and my interest in like books as a concept are all of the things that I use to like present a front of being a person to the world. This is like how I fake existing. And like all of those things like abandoned me in the space of like 3 months. Like some of them were very kind of protracted processes, but like it got to a point where like none of the things that I kind of based my sense of self on were there anymore. So I like did a lot of therapy and did a lot of like journaling and did a lot of like self-reflection along with all of the kind of medical self-reflection I was having to do. And I was kind of like, okay, this is like horrific, but I was also quite excited at the prospect of being like, okay, I've burnt all my bridges, so like who do I want to be now? Like where do I want to go from here? I was planning to do a PhD after the masters, and then I was too ill, and then like for many reasons I didn't want to pursue it just then. So then I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting to be in this situation because I was expecting to be doing a PhD by now, and instead I'm like in my mum's spare room, unable to like get a job because I can't stay awake and I can't do anything. So I need to like assemble a life that I want to live and then like go and live it. So that was like, I can't remember what question you asked. That was a very long answer.
No, and thank you for sharing that and sharing that honestly, because certainly I don't know, when I talk to some of the other guests coming up, I don't know if necessarily this will be the same for them. I'm genuinely very interested to hear. But for me, my journey to realizing that I don't want to follow the same path as like the normal path is very similar. And every time I think I want to follow a normal path, something happens that dispels that for me. I had a burnout before Christmas. I was like, I know I want to do my traditional consulting job, and again, immersed myself in it. Like I literally just went around making work for myself so that I could work like at least 12 hours a day. If I didn't want working 12 hours a day, I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am. Like I am my job, right? And that's who I was. I am my consulting job and nothing more. And then over the Christmas, something just flipped in my brain and I just completely burned out. And I tried to come back in the January, I just couldn't do it. And kind of similar to you, right? I got to a point where I was like, not only can I not get out of bed, I can't tell you who I am anymore. And I do not know. And it's just an incredibly unsettling experience. And I'd had something similar before a couple of times, but never to that extent.
Yeah, like I felt like I'd like teetered on the brink a couple of times, but I'd always like come back to safe ground. And then this time I was like, I'm at the bottom of the abyss.
Yes. I don't think there's any more. There's no more down than here. And whilst that is a really rubbish experience, I remember the swearing, I'm not going to need to edit that out now. Whilst it is a very rubbish experience as you're going through it, I think if you can come out the other side, however long that takes, that self-awareness that you learn is utterly invaluable. I'm going to say something really controversial now, and I'm sure there'll be some hate comments in the comments, and that's fine, which is that I think that people who go through burnout type experiences are at an advantage over those who do not, because they have more self-awareness and introspection, because it forces you to do that ultimately leads to you having a more fulfilling life, because you have an awareness of what truly makes you happy and what doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think like all rock bottom experiences have that, or at least have that possibility within them. Like I think that's one of the AA like steps. I think step 1 is like rock bottom, and then like step 2 is like going to AA. I'm butchering this, I don't know what they are, but like I'm sure that being at rock bottom is supposed to be the beginning of that like journey, because that's the point at which you're like, oh, this addiction is not serving me. And like obviously I don't want to be glib, and I don't think that I've ever been like addicted to writing or something like stupid, but like the idea that there is something about your life that is so like all encompassing, and it does drive you to a certain place, and you get there and you're like, actually this hasn't been good for me, and I need to make changes. Like I think that applies in so many different contexts.
I was in a job of a company that I won't name, where there was lots of redundancies, and there were people who'd been there like 10, 15, nearly 20 years, and they were just made redundant like that. And because they had hung their whole working life, their whole career, at least for the last decade or so, on that job, it was a very unsettling, like it was a very disruptive experience, not just in terms of the pragmatics, but like you thought this was what your job was going to be for the whole rest of your life. Like suddenly all of that is taken away from you. And you go through that experience and being like, wow, that was really immersive, and now it's just suddenly been forcefully taken away from me. What next? And actually after that, I've seen a lot of those people go on to have really fascinating, wonderful careers. Like we've done loads of different things because that unsettling experience was the catalyst. And so rock bottom doesn't have to necessarily mean like a mental health crisis. It could mean different things for different.
Yeah, like just the rug getting pulled out from under you, and you suddenly have to work out where you want to like stand. I don't know how to finish that metaphor, but like
yeah, I completely agree. And I think one of the whole reasons of setting up this podcast is because I feel really comfortable now, more so than ever before. So before I was always not taking I was always taking the road less traveled, but I didn't feel comfortable in doing that. So every time I went and found the next unconventional thing I wanted to do, I immersed myself in becoming the most stereotypical version of that unconventional thing that I trying to do. But now I'm like, I'm just going to do that thing. I'm going to do it my way. And I kind of don't really care if that is not the stereotypical unconventional thing or the stereotypical thing. I am just going to do me. And because of the burnout experience, I know now what me is. And the whole reason of setting up this podcast is because it's truly made me happy, and I think it's other people could be happy this way too. But I want to help people understand how they could do that without having to go through that mental health crisis, that burnout, that redundancy, that whatever it is, or getting fired, whatever it is. This podcast is to help people and inspire them that you can do that, and you don't have to hit rock bottom first.
Yeah.
Don't know really where I was going with that. Just to maybe, I don't know, put. I think it's because I just wanted to relate why that's relevant to what the objective of this podcast is.
Yeah, and to like do stuff that is sustainable for you. Like I've been like many different versions of myself at different times, and after the masters I was like, maybe I'm going to do a politics degree, or maybe I'm going to do a neuroscience degree. Like literally I was just like grabbing at straws, and then I was like, is it like you're allowed to be interested in something without doing a degree in it? Like also you can't afford that, which is the main thing that stopped. But like if I, like if higher education were free, I probably would have like 17 degrees by now, because as soon as I'm interested in something, I'm like, well, gotta dive in head first. And that ability to be like, let's take a step back. But I think like, I can't remember what I was going to say. No, it's gone. Sorry.
No, that's cool. That's oh no, you said something as well that neuroscience degree.
Yeah.
So if you're comfortable about it, I'd like to talk about neurodiversity and your career and kind of how that shapes you, your journey.
Yeah, which is in fact what I was going to say, and then I forgot what I was saying. So that was a nice
perfect
return and also illustration of neurodiversity. So like I think knowing what is sustainable and what you like doing and what your capacity for stuff is. Like there have been times where I've wanted to be like, I was like, oh, I like writing, I'll become a journalist. And then I was like, no, I actually wouldn't enjoy journalism as a job. What I like is the freedom to explore stuff by myself. I like setting my own hours. I like doing all of this stuff. But like actually doing the same thing every day, I would hate. And I love my job because my job is incredibly varied, and it's customer service. So like every single customer interaction, I've no idea what's going to happen until they come up to me and start talking. And they could be like asking for help. They could be yelling at me. They could be asking for directions. Like there's infinite possibilities. And I find that really exciting and like energizing. And it means that I come home at the end of the day and I'm like ready to write or ready to do something else, because I don't feel like I've been drained by like copywriting all day or like doing something that I don't find fulfilling. And then my segue is like one of the reasons that I think I enjoy my job so much is like my neurodivergences. So I'm autistic and I have ADHD, which is like the two main things because I'm a main character. So I didn't know this about myself until 5 years ago. And I had like occasionally been like, I wonder if like, but like as a teenager, I was like, maybe I'm autistic. Maybe I like, you know, like I was like, maybe I'm schizophrenic. Like I did this with like everything. And most of them I was like, I don't think so. And then I kind of got to a point where I was like in therapy, having a lot of, I like had a lot of diagnoses, but also like none of them kind of felt like the thing that like put all of the puzzle pieces together. Like it was like, oh, you've shone a light like in this corner and in this corner and in this corner, but there's still like a lot of stuff here that we're not like finding a name for. And eventually I was like, for various reasons, including that my mum told me that when I was 15 and really struggling in school, and she considered trying to get me a scholarship to the local private school, she went to talk to the head teacher of the private school, described me to him, and he was like, sounds like she's autistic. And she just never told me this, didn't send me to the school. Like I stayed at my school and it was fine in the end. But she told me this in like 2017. And I was like, that feels like information that would have been useful 5 years ago.
That, like, 5 years ago, that would have been awesome.
Literally just like offhand. And then I like went into, obviously then immersed myself into looking into it and like learning about neurodiversity, learning about autism, learning about ADHD and how they interact. Like they're kind of similar in that they're both like differences in the way your brain works, which is what like the term neurodivergence means. It means like that your brain is like wired differently to like a neurotypical brain. So they have a lot of shared symptoms or shared traits, and some of them are like the exact same thing, and some of them are like the same thing, but it's for a different reason. But you also can have both. And I at first was like, I'm just autistic. I think I just have some like ADHD traits, but like it's just the autism. And then one of my friends got diagnosed with ADHD. And she literally just went to see the psychiatrist for like depression. And he like asked her a bunch of questions. And she was like, yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that. Yeah. And then he got to the end and he was like, so you have ADHD? And then she told me this story and like told me all the questions. And I was like, oh my God, I have ADHD.
Yes.
It's like, do you interrupt people when they're speaking because you already know what question they're going to ask you? So you just answer the question. And I was like, does everyone not do that?
You're like, yeah, obviously. In fact, before she'd finished
the question. So that was also in 2017. So I was like, end of 2017, like I finished my master's, I'm single, I'm losing all my friendships, like this is happening, chronic fatigue is happening, everything is happening. And it takes a very long time to get diagnosed on the NHS for both as an adult. But eventually I got diagnosed and now I have medication, which helps a little bit, but as you will have seen, doesn't just make me not lose track of thought or interrupt people mid-conversation. But I think that definitely affects both the fact that I like to immerse myself in things. Like I think that's a big trait for both autism and ADHD, is like obsessing about stuff that you're interested in. Hyperfixations in ADHD and like interest in autism are like essential criteria. And I think the fact
viable product.
like the fact that as soon as I become interested in something, I feel like if I don't learn everything about it, then like I'm not doing justice to that interest, or I'm like failing at being interested in it. And there's some kind of weird stuff to still unpack there, but I think there's also like a lot of joy in like being so excited about something, being so interested in something. And I think that's like something that as a teenager I thought was like really weird about myself. And I was like, no one else cares about like this TV show as much as like no one else cares about Taylor Swift as much as I care about Taylor Swift. Like, why am I so weird about stuff that I like? And now I'm like, this is a massive strength. And like, it's having those like diagnoses, or like before I had the diagnoses, but knowing that about myself was again a really big like turning point of being like, oh, this is not like a weird personality trait. Well, like it is, but like it's because of like this condition, and like it's not going to go away, because that's not how either of these things work. So like you are stuck with this, so you can either like continue to pretend that you don't like Taylor Swift and like try and live like a neurotypical life that is going to be unfulfilling, and you can continue having like chronic depression and OCD, or you can like actually just enjoy the things that you enjoy and lean into those things and like find stuff that works for you. And I think in the beginning of 2018, I got a job working in finance, like admin and finance. It wasn't like I wasn't doing finance. I was just like posting stuff to stage. Yeah, it was like 6 months.
I remember this.
And I hated it.
Yeah. I can imagine.
It was weird because I was like, there is an alternate universe in which I love this job because I love numbers and I love logic and I love making things work. And like one of the things that I loved doing was like balancing like an Excel spreadsheet every month. I had to input all of this data and I had to make all of the things balance, and I loved it. It was my favorite thing to do. But what I hated doing was like copying this data to this program and like not making any mistakes and not getting distracted and not getting bored. And I was in like a silent room with 2 other co-workers, and we couldn't, like, they both worked in silence. I wasn't allowed to wear headphones because I had to answer the phone, so I couldn't like concentrate.
That's horrible.
And I literally felt insane. Like I felt like I was crawling the walls of my own skull. Like it was awful.
You think it was going back?
And it was really sad because I was really excited about this job. It was in York, away from London, and I was really interested in, like, it was a charity. I was really interested in the work that they did, and I was like, both of my parents are accountants. Like maybe this is the path I've been meaning to be on like all along. And I got there and I was like, guys, I hate it. I hate this. And it took a really long time for me to be like, I don't hate this because I'm lazy or because I'm stupid or because I'm not trying. I hate this because I'm not designed to concentrate on like copying numbers from one column to another column. Like that's not what I'm built to do.
Yeah.
And I would come home and I would like be sitting at my little laptop, like moving columns, moving data, and I would be thinking about like all of the stuff I wanted to write, and I wouldn't be able to write it because I had like work to do, and I was like sitting next to my supervisor, so I couldn't even like get away with a cheeky bit of work, like a cheeky bit of writing during the work day. I was like constantly having to focus but also like failing to focus, so like still not doing any work but also not doing anything I wanted to do. And then I would get home and I'd be too tired from this like weird masking. Lasted 4 months before I handed in my notice. And it was part-time, it wasn't even full-time, because I was like, this isn't sustainable because I can't do the stuff that I want to do outside of this. And I have always worked in like customer service. I worked in McDonald's famously for many years, and I loved that. And I like at the time when I spoke to my boyfriend at the time, like he was always like, I can't wait to like not work in Carphone Warehouse anymore, and I can't wait to like not be told what to do. I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, like, you know, like standard 18-year-old white boy who watches like Russell Brand shit stuff.
Oh yeah, edit that word out, Charlie.
But I remember being like, I don't really care. Like I'm quite happy to be told what to do all day at work, but like what I want is to then go home and like have my own interests. I've never been looking for a job which like ticks all of the boxes for me, and I think that's partly because like I have too many boxes. Like I don't think a job exists other than freelancer, which like lets me do all the things that I enjoy doing and that I'm good at doing. And I think also like identifying things that I like, things I'm good at, and trying to like hit as much in the center of that Venn diagram as possible has been very useful. But I just got my current job, like I just wanted a job in London, and I was like, customer service, I can do that. I applied, I got the job, so I was like, cool, this will tide me over. It's been 4 years and I'm still there because I find it like super like energizing and interesting, and I work with a bunch of creative people. I get access to all of this art, and like it means that I can come home at the end of the day and do everything else that I want to do instead of it like detracting from the time and the energy that I have to spend on other things.
And this is exactly why I reached out to you to be a guest, because you've got this balance between you have a job because like you live in London and London is an expensive place to live, but what you've done is you're pursuing your road less traveled whilst recognizing that like the bills have to be paid and some of these things may not match up. So you've got a job, but what you actually do is you draw energy from your job. Because there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I've done my job, and now, like exactly as you said before, like, I've done my job and I'm gonna do it, but I know that I'm really doing it to do something else, and it's actually going to suck all of the energy. So then you don't have the creativity to do the other things, and so actually you never travel the road less path. Can't travel the road less path. But you never travel the bloody blah. You end up just like falling into this very obvious stereotypical path, and then feeling deeply unfulfilled by that, and being like, oh yeah, but everyone feels like that. Actually, the majority of people do, but I don't believe that just because the majority of people do school, maybe uni, work, retire, die, I don't believe that just because most people do that, that is the only way to do things or the best way to do things, or you shouldn't challenge that if something doesn't feel right for you. And that's why I really like how you've taken your journey, which is like, yeah, I know I need to do something to pay the bills, but you know what? I'm going to do it in a way that actually invigorates everything else I want to do, rather than sucks energy from it and is a compromise on everything else I want to do. I'm conscious that we're kind of coming up to the top of the hour, and if anybody is still listening, then thank you very much. I hope that you're finding this useful. I guess there's one last thing I'd like to kind of touch on before we wrap up, which is coming back to your point on neurodivergence. What I really like about what you said is you're taking something that for a long time felt like a thing you had to fix, and you're now, I really like this word, lean into it. I hear it from my business coach as well. Lean into this thing that feels uncomfortable. Like you're leaning into it, and you're turning it into a strength, and actually it is an integral part of your road, because those immersive experiences are the things that give you loads of opportunities, because you say yes to loads of stuff. They are the thing that help you identify, okay, I'm actually maybe taking on too much now. What do I want to do next? They are the thing that pushes that self-reflection. And I guess key thing I want to reinforce to the people at home is that if that sounds familiar to you, like, there's no need to try and fight it. Embrace it as part of your journey.
100%. And I think like the times when I was trying to fix those things were the times when I wasn't successful. And like, it's not just about success, it's about like fulfillment, it's about happiness. But like, I also am a very like success driven person. I'm a perfectionist. I have a lot of like, I want to be doing stuff all of the time. I want to be productive, and I want what I produce to be good. And like, some of that is like hangover from thinking that I'm a terrible flawed person, and some of that is like because I'm autistic and I have ADHD, and I like stuff to be like correct, and I like stuff to be complete. And also like some of it I think is just like my personality, and I don't think that you can meaningfully like distinguish between those things. But like at school and at uni, I really struggled because I didn't understand like what I was supposed to be doing. And people were like, oh, you just need to revise. And I was like, I don't know what that word means. Like, I don't know what you want from me. And no one could tell me. And it was like, it was awful. It was like heartbreaking. And I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, there are so many things that if you knew this about yourself, like you could do this. You could do this so easily, but you just had no idea what you were doing. You were like fighting a losing battle. And as soon as I stopped trying to do that, I was like, okay, what's the easiest way for me to do this? Like, what is the path of least resistance? The path of least resistance is for me to like immerse myself in the thing I'm interested in, and I go into the exam and just like, which is what I did at school. Like my English GCSEs and A levels, I didn't revise for them. I just read the book like 17 times.
Nice.
And then I would just go into the exam and they would ask questions, and I would be like, yeah, this thing happened like on the mountaintop in Lord of the Flies. And I remember it because I've read the book so many times. And like at uni, there's too many books. So I couldn't do that. And I was like, I don't know how to like revise themes, because I don't, that's not how I think about things. Like I'm a big picture person, and I don't know how to break this down into something manageable. And if I don't know what I would have done, but like if I had at least kind of known this about myself at uni, then I think I would have had a very, very different experience. And it's only after that I've had this, like done all this therapy, done all this self-reflection, and been like, oh, okay, the way that people expect me to do things is probably not the way that I'm going to do things. And like my line manager now knows this about me. He knows that if he gives me like a simple task, I will go away, spend 2 hours on it, and then come back with like a fully like referenced document that's like 5 pages long that has information that he didn't know was out there, that I like went and found for this like incredibly simple brief that he wanted me to do. But he's always like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, yeah, like this is what I will do if you want me to do something.
Yeah.
But if you just want me to do the simple thing, I won't do it. So like,
maybe I'm not the person for that job.
Exactly. Like we need to know how to, you know, like we need to know ourselves. We need to know the people we work with. And I think like knowing yourself is really useful in a workplace, that you can go in and be like, these are my strengths and these are my weaknesses. And like, these are the things that I mitigate about those weaknesses. Like I know that I have a tendency to be a perfectionist, that I take too long and stuff. So I will set myself a timer and I will not go over that timer. And I will just have to hand in something that is not like my ideal. But it also means that there's a bunch of stuff that I'm really good at and that I'm going to instinctively do that you're not going to need to ask me for.
Yeah, I think actually that's really important, because whilst people are taking their road less travelled, most of us, as you say, right, need to have a job and be in the workplace whilst we find all that out. And actually maybe having our job is part of our journey. Certainly it is for me. It sounds like it is for you as well. I think what you say there around being open and honest with the people around you, about what you want, how you want to get there, and what you need along the way to help you, whether you're neurodivergent or you're not, is a hugely valuable conversation, because it provides that self-reflection, provides that insight that ultimately whether you get genuine joy in taking the very stereotypical path, and there are people out there that do that, and that's great, but they also benefit from this as well, right? Because it becomes a deeper, more fulfilling journey. I'm conscious of the time, so I think we need to wrap it up there. But I just have one last question, which I know I said that before, but it really it's what's next on your path?
So I am working on a bunch of different projects, and none of them is like in a position where it has a like an easy next thing. So they're all still very like nebulous. I was supposed to have a play on an extract from a play on at Vault Festival, but that has been cancelled, so I won't. But yeah, I have a lot of projects that are at various stages of development. So I guess all I can say is really watch this space. But that covers plays, fiction, non-fiction, and writing about Taylor Swift for those interested.
Perfect. That sounds great. We will watch this space. If you're watching this on YouTube, hello, and I'll include a link to your website and to your Twitter. Your Twitter handle is
Nicky J. Watkinson.
Boom! I thought I knew this, but if I say the wrong one, then those people don't go follow the wrong person, which would be embarrassing. So go and follow Nicky on Twitter. Go and check out her website, commission her for work, if it's the type of thing you want to work on. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and of course, it's extra special thank you to you, Nicky, for participating. Sounds like the wrong word, but for being a guest. You've been a wonderful guest, and a great pleasure to chat to you. So, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for listening / watching.